Good afternoon. My name is Tammy Mendoza, and I'm the current board president. We are going to be starting the meeting today. It's Tuesday, June 6th. We're at the Department of Consumer Affairs, hearing room number 186 at 1747 North Market Boulevard in Sacramento. I'm going to have the board members introduce themselves, starting on my left.
Donna Norton, LVN member.
Paul Sellers, I'm a Psychiatric member.
John Deerking, public member.
Good afternoon. I'm Bernice Baste Martinez. I'm a public member and the vice president of this board.
Ken Maxey, speaker appointee.
Good afternoon, Samantha James Perez. I'm a Psych Tech member.
Cheryl Turner, public member, appointed by the governor.
And then Cheryl, would you like to introduce yourself and
Good afternoon. I'm Cheryl Anderson. I am the Supervising Nursing Education Consultant. And with me today, Vicki Saavedra, who's busy taking minutes, Vanessa Guerrera, and Jennifer Johnson.
And then we have our DCA legal here.
Rebecca Vaughn, board counsel.
Ryan Marcroft, Assistant Chief Counsel for DCA.
And then we have a quorum here of the board. And then we're gonna move on to agenda item 2, the Pledge of Allegiance. So if Donna Norton could lead us in that.
Please stand. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So on to agenda item number 3, public comment on items not listed on the agenda. The board may not discuss or take any action on any item raised during this public comment section, except to decide whether to place the matter on the agenda for a future meeting. Seeing none, seeing none, any board members have any comments? And then the next agenda item is suggestions for future agenda items. Any?
Other than we had a whole lot of future agenda items. Only to make sure that the other items that we've had in meetings past make it to our future agendas, but that's my only comment.
Madam President?
Yes.
I had asked for something to be put on the agenda last meeting, which was AB 387, but from what I understand, it's been tabled. It's no longer active, so that could be actually taken off if need be.
Okay. AB, what was the?
387, I believe, if the ledge wants to verify that it's been
That is my understanding. Yeah, that's my understanding.
Yes, Madam President. I wanted an update on the CE audit issue. CE audit issue, the status of everything. As a new board member, maybe the others are more up to date on it, but I'd like to hear more about it. Thank
And then the 2017-2019 strategic plan update from the executive committee. So we met with Cheryl, that was May, I'm in the wrong month, May 22nd. And we did review the strategic plan, and just 1 minute. Yeah, if you can. Bernice, if you want to follow up.
Certainly, Madam Chair, President. During that meeting, as was the commitment of the executive committee to the board, we have begun to not only review the strategic plan and the document that came back to us after corrections were made, we are now in the process of adding additional goals and deliverables. And we should have that ready for the board at our next formal board meeting. We just wanted to make sure that our colleagues here on the board know what we're doing and where we are in terms of the directive you gave the executive committee.
Okay, we're on agenda item 6, discussion and possible action to establish an administrative committee. So at the last executive committee, Bernice and I have added the administrative committee to the board's committee. It's a member of 2, and we have Samantha and Cheryl to the administrative committee. And we're going to have Samantha chair the committee, and basically it's going to modify, so we're modifying the structure so that they can have where they come in and rank and file staff can have discussions with board members, and they can give us an update of what's going on and how everybody is doing there at the board, so we can keep abreast of any issues ahead of hopefully any big issues arising over that. Let's see, what else? So hi John.
Can I speak on, may I speak? I was going to ask to speak on the strategic plan briefly, if I may.
Oh, I forgot public comment, didn't I? Sorry. Okay, John. John, we have 3 minutes.
You'll have 3 minutes. I just want to let you know, or highly recommend, once the strategic plan is approved, recommend that you disseminate it to all the members of the board in the leadership position of managers or supervisors. Let them identify those goals that their departments are to support, and help them come up with the metrics that will need to be identified and supported. So when the strategic plan is reviewed at a later date, you would have the data to show that you've either made progress, you've met the goal, or you're working towards the goal, or it hasn't started yet. That way, if the strategic plan gets reviewed again, you have the data that shows you are addressing each and every goal that you've selected, and you have the supporting data from the employees or from your staff that shows what your metrics have been. I recommend a light color goal of red, yellow, green to show you started it. Green means you've met the goal, yellow means you're working towards the goal, and red means you have not started it, or that you are working it but it hasn't met yellow or green status level. And then ask the staff to be able to provide metrics to support it should questions come up. This way, when you review the strategic plan, which should be about every meeting to show any changes, when you go in front of the Senate or the Assembly, you have the data to show that your strategic plan is being worked and that you're addressing any issues that may come up. Just a suggestion, but I do have a background as a strategic planner for the state of California. So just something we never really got to that point yet. We're now at that point, and I recommend as a way to move forward. Thank you.
Okay. Is there any more public comment on that agenda item, on the strategic plan? Seeing none. So, agenda item 6 for the discussion and possible action to establish an administrative committee. So, any board discussion on that?
Just a little bit. I want to make sure that we know what your wishes and your vision are for the admin committee. It was my understanding that the administrative committee would not be a vehicle for urgent staff matters, that would be human resources and possibly union labor issues, but it would address overall morale and ongoing big picture type items. Is that correct?
Yes. Any other?
I just have two, I'm sorry.
I understand why this topic has come up. So I'm just concerned that the establishment of yet another committee of the board, we already have enough issues with having the current committees that we have be up and running and having the ability to serve on those committees. So that is one of the concerns, is the formation of another committee. And then also, I thought I recalled something about the day-to-day, that it's not up to the purview of the board for the day-to-day interactions with the staff at the BVNPT. So I'm just concerned that this might be an avenue to circumvent the supervision and the direction of the management and the EOs. And I'm not sure what the purpose of it would be. I understand that this board received some negativity related to the existing morale and the things that were happening at the board, hence the investigation and all of that. But I don't know that it's necessary to form a committee. It almost seems like we're putting a Band-Aid on something, and I think that might fester, actually. So I'm just voicing my concern for another committee.
Madam President, I just actually brought the background paper from the Assembly. It was, I hear what you're saying, Ms. Norton, and I feel your words. It was actually a recommendation from the Assembly Business and Professions Committee in our background paper, and they actually had made this recommendation that we form it. And if I can just read a couple comments from the background paper, it says, board members have expressed concern over being unaware of what is happening at the staff level, suggesting that board members can benefit from additional information. One solution is the BVN can take to resolve this issue is establish or utilizing an existing committee to work with staff and make recommendations to the full board. The BVNPT could establish a staff check-in where each member is scheduled 5 to 10 minutes, and it goes on about that. Confidential questionnaire, discuss anything the staff might be feeling is relevant. The committee could then share the feelings with the full board during closed session or investigate further. The BVNPT could establish a suggestion and complaint system that is periodically reviewed and then delegate further investigation to the committee. The committee can be used to provide open, confidential lines of communication with the staff. So that is the direct language from the Assembly BNP. That's their wish and their recommendation. It's not something we thought of on our own. And I know that it is unorthodox. I don't believe any other boards do actually have a committee such as this one. But the position we're in currently and possibly going into sunset, I know that my personal opinion is that we should take the recommendation seriously and go ahead and move forward. That was the only, that was where it came from.
John?
My question is this the intent to organize it as an ad hoc committee so it can be dissolved at some point by policy fiat of the president? Or do we vote to formally establish the committee?
My intent is to formally vote to keep this committee so that we don't end up in a similar situation as we have had in the past.
Okay, with regards to staff morale, that is absolutely not unique to the BVMPT or any public or private organization. So what can we do to ameliorate the issues of staff with regards to morale? Because many are labor issues.
To me, I think that someone avenue to listen to what's going on, possibly it could be not necessarily a labor issue or a management issue. It could just be that they want to figure out an avenue to work things out. Maybe it's a communication factor that when somebody's trying to communicate something that they would like done, they're saying one thing, the interpretation of what the person is understanding could be something else, and it could be just a misunderstanding or a miscommunication. And just by sitting there and having the avenue to talk to, and maybe they don't feel comfortable talking to the supervisor at that time.
No, I understand the vision and the purpose of committee, and I'm 100% in support. May I ask legal if there'd be any restrictions on authority to ameliorate any morale issues that might emerge?
I suspect there would be. I'm not sure that I could catalog them all now, but I think you're right. I mean, the board can't step in the shoes of union representation. The board wouldn't be in a position to deal with disciplinary matters and those types of things. So I can envision a number of scenarios that the board would maybe be constrained in the actions that it was able to take. Perhaps that would be one of the first jobs of this committee, is to catalog some of those different roles and maybe specify in more detail, like you're suggesting there, Mr. Durkin, a little bit more fine-tuned scope of what the committee might be doing.
And at the end of the day, we can certainly provide a listening ear, of course, right? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other board member comments?
So we've heard from Samantha, and Samantha's in favor, and I think on the committee herself. But Cheryl, your feelings on this and your ability to serve on this committee?
Well, of course, I'm a new board member, but I have served on other boards before, and I've run my own business for over 30 years. I think I have a little insight into some issues that might be helpful to the committee. I did see, yes, the point you made about interfering with day-to-day operations, but I also see the recommendations made by the Assembly and the Senate. I'm not sure the Senate specifically addressed it, but I think that if we're interested in maintaining this board, that we should try to find a way to fulfill some of the recommendations that are being given to us, and I'm willing to work towards that.
Thank you.
Just, excuse me, just an observation. Historically, there was thinking that we as board members were only to communicate with staff through the executive officer. That said, this particular committee provides a pathway for ongoing communication in general with staff, and hopefully in a non-threatening environment for staff. In other words, so they feel they can talk openly without retribution or without feeling, did they cross the line? And I'm not saying necessarily it has to be anything of consequence, but frequently, myself, I have a huge staff and I've had staffs. There are times when they don't feel they can say what they want to say in an environment or in a work meeting. So this provides a potential second avenue. And yes, I am in favor of the recommendation.
Any further board comment?
I might suggest that one of the things the committee also takes up is amending the procedural manual. I think a number of the comments that have been made by some of the members so far have spawned out of the procedural manual, which says things like all authority and responsibility for the civil service staff is delegated to the EO and members shall not intervene in the day-to-day. So that might be one of the recommendations that comes out of this committee are appropriate amendments to the procedural manual, one of which would be adding this committee to the standing committees that are listed in there. But just to raise that flag for whoever is going to be on that. And then I do think at one point, if it's going to be a standing committee, we do want a motion from the board.
Any further comments? Is there a motion?
I would move to form an administrative committee pursuant to the recommendations that have already been made and amend and update the administrative manual as necessary.
I second that.
Thank you. So there's a motion and a second. Any further comment by board members? Seeing none. Any public comment? Seeing none. We have a motion and a second. The motion is to move to create the administrative committee and amend the procedural manual as such. We'll start with a roll call vote on my left. Donna?
I will abstain.
Paul?
I'll vote for it.
John?
Yes.
Bernice?
Yes?
Myself is yes. Ken?
Yes.
Samantha?
Yes?
Cheryl?
Yes.
Motion carries. So we're moving on to agenda item 7. Oh, 7 and 8. Is there any, the board is going to convene in closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 11126, Subdivision A1 and 2, to hear and discuss complaints or charges made against executive officer and to discuss and take action on the continued employment of executive officer. Also pursuant to Government Code Section 11126, Subdivision A1, the board will meet in closed session to discuss and possibly take action on the appointment of acting or interim executive officer. I have one comment prior to that. Late last week, I received an email from Ms. Brown resigning as EO from the board. And I acknowledge that we received it, but I'd like the full board to, if they have comments or about it.
Yes, I believe in order for a resignation to be effective under current law, it has to be accepted by the appointing authority. Do we have copies of the documented copies properly authenticated of the resignation, a purported resignation?
So we have copies of the documents, although I'm not sure that's an accurate statement with respect to an exempt at-will appointment. As an at-will appointment, it is terminable at the will of either party. And in this instance, the notice that was received was it was effective June 3rd. And so effective June 3rd, executive officer is essentially no longer the executive officer of the board.
Assuming there's proper authentication, correct?
I'm not sure what proper authentication is, but we have been in communication with Dr. Brown and her attorney in that regard.
Well, here's what I mean by authentication. The substance of the purported document is as it appears according to the will of the one submitting the document. It's an authentic document.
I believe that's the case, yes.
Well, you believe it's the case or it is the case?
I'm not sure I understand your question, but we received,
I want to know that it's actually from Dr. Brown.
I see, and the representation made to me is yes, that it is from Dr. Brown.
And we'll see evidence of that?
And we can show you that in closed session, yes.
Any other comment from board members?
Given the circumstance and the questions before us, it's clear we will have a number of items to discuss in closed session. That said, there's great possibility that there are members of the board who might like to comment about the leadership of Dr. Brown.
Any board members?
I will. I was president during the time that Dr. Brown was our executive officer, and I know we have had some hiccups, and I know that everything hasn't been perfect. But one thing I guess I would like to go on the record and say is that there were some visionary changes that she did bring to this board, and that were really good, and very bold. Maybe a little bit too bold. Maybe that's why we're in the place where we're at now. But I do appreciate the time that she spent with us, and I appreciate the vision that she brought and wanted to bring for our Renaissance. And it looks like we'll be entering a new chapter now. But there were some great things done as well. I think that's not always mentioned.
And myself, I want to recognize that Dr. Kamika Brown for her talents and skills. We thank her for her professionalism she brought and applied in all of our encounters. We are appreciative for all that she's done during her time as EO. Any other board members have comments?
Yes, I've made rather frequent visits to Sacramento, both the DCA, on the occasion of our meetings, and also visits at the BVNPT for participation in various committees or subcommittees. The first wind or inkling, because I have had a number of interactions with a number of staff from different units, that anything was amiss was based on these anonymous letters that I believed all our board members received. And that was inconsistent with my understanding and my observation of Dr. Brown's day-to-day management. I think she's a fine leader. I think there perhaps was some resistance to change on the staff level, which is not unexpected for any organization, public or private. But I think she had some very, very strong administrative and personal skills that really benefited the people of the state of California and our consumers in particular.
Ms. Cheryl?
Yes, although I never had an opportunity to meet her, and I'm not sure if this is a closed session item. Based on the documents I reviewed, I would have liked to have the opportunity to discuss whether or not she could be retained or let go. So I regret that we received the letter and didn't have that discussion.
Yeah, I'm sorry, if I may, Madam President, perhaps we can just parse the language of the purported resignation to evince some kind of, determine whether it's unequivocal or not, in which means no turning back, right?
I think that's okay. I think that's a closed session discussion.
Okay. Donna?
So I was very impressed with Dr. Brown when we interviewed her, and very in awe of her vibrancy and her ability and where I believe she wanted to take this board. I second, what Board Member Turner was saying in the reports that we got. It is with a heavy heart that we accept her resignation. And I wish her well, and I hope that some of the changes, albeit bold, that she was trying to make that we can sustain with this board, because I think she really did have the best interest of the board at heart.
I agree, Donna.
Let me just add one other thing, if I may. Dr. Brown was placed on administrative leave, ATO, last week in January. Here we are in June. I don't believe that DCA has been particularly supportive with respect to the management inquiries, which is a survey, perhaps highlighting areas that could require some improvement with respect to day-to-day managing of staff and resources. And I don't think it was fair to Dr. Brown to basically string her along for 4 months.
Ryan, did you have something? Any public comment?
Hi, I'm Gwen Ross. I'm from Clovis Adult School, Director of Nursing there. And I met Camilla Brown at our California Vocational Nurse Educators Conference. And I found her to be very delightful and very supportive to most of the LVN teachers that were present, and went beyond her scope of practice to help some of them. Not knowing the particulars of what's happened is such a mystery. When it came time to replacing the executive officer, I will say that myself, amongst many, many schools, wrote letters to the governor stating that we wanted a nurse in the executive officer's position of a nursing board. We did get a nurse, and we were very pleased with that. What has transpired since then, we don't know. And there are multiple schools throughout the state of California that are wondering what the heck has happened. Of course, they're kept in the dark. Her caliber was very good. So I imagine that will never come out, or understand why she's resigning when we were so supportive of having her. So I just wanted to let it be known that if she does resign or is not reinstated, that I still hope that we will receive a nurse for our executive officer. A nurse that's a nurse, thinks like a nurse, and acts like a nurse. So thank you for hearing me. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
John Vertito. I'm a nursing instructor at Curram College of Nursing here in Sacramento. I had the opportunity to be a member of the board that hired Dr. Brown. We found her, as said, was both vibrant, energetic, knowledgeable on the nursing arts, and an educator. I strongly regret the submission of her resignation. But given the past history, that the situation that developed, I understand it. I don't agree with it, but I do understand it. I do also encourage that this board continue. I know we're going to agenda item 9, but I do encourage that when you start looking for a replacement, get a nurse. Because of the previous EO that was not a nurse, erroneous information was passed to other state agencies that have created some difficulty for the board that you will now have to face. So as a precaution, I strongly advise that a psych tech, an LVN, or an RN be considered for the position of an EO who will represent this board to other state agencies and verify the accuracy of the information that is being presented to avoid any future complications. Thank you.
Thank you.
Carrie Wybrew, Concord Career Colleges, Regional Dean of Nursing for Oregon, California, Missouri. And so I resonate a lot with what I've heard about feeling like you're kept in the dark and not knowing really what's going on. hoping that we continue to move forward with advancing in our future here in California with a direction of following where the national councils and the state boards of nursing, where I feel like we were heading, because I've been to the national councils and I've not seen California represented, and that's not good, because we have a huge constituency of nurses and we need to be at the table, because our United States has a lot of problems and it's not good that we have so many nurses in our state and not enough nursing representation and leadership. So we definitely can't lose the foothold that we so desperately need here. So I agree that we really need to have a nurse leader, a strong nurse leader. And it's not easy. Not easy. I think you guys know that. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll now adjourn to closed session. Okay, thank you. We're back in open session pursuant to Government Code Section 11125.2. I will announce the actions that the board took in closed session by a majority vote. The board appointed Cheryl Anderson as the interim executive officer. The effective date would be?
Effective on the date that she's sworn into the office, the oath of office is administered.
And until such time as a new executive officer is named.
And just to clarify, it was a unanimous vote.
Thank you.
Okay.
And we'll now continue with agenda item number 9, discussion of procedures to search for and select a new executive officer, including the possible selection of a search committee. DCA Human Resources Chief Ricardo de la Cruz is here to present.
Good evening, members of the board. I'm here to discuss the next steps in the recruitment process for the executive officer for the Board of Vocational Nursing and Psychiatric Technicians. What you see before you is an outline, a draft of the job posting template that has been prepared. It is mimicking the original posting, which is the next attachment of the last job advertisement from 2015 that was utilized. And lastly, what's also attached is the duty statement for the executive officer. However, I do want to draw your attention to the last page in the attachment, which is the last page of the duty statement. There's a section that I've highlighted in green for each of the copies, which indicates an outdated statement. It was a statement that we had to clarify during the last recruitment process, that the executive officer does not need to hold a licensing, a nursing license in order to have this position. So if the board is looking to make that adjustment to the duty statement, either to update the duty statement to remove this language or to clarify other portions of the duties that the board sees is more appropriate, at a future board meeting, it would have to be agendized and updated at that point. However, if the board would like to proceed with the recruitment process, the board president can select two members of the board to serve as the selection committee that will work with me and my office on the recruitment we will gather the applications for the selection committee. They can screen the applicants, and also can narrow down the candidate pool and have the top candidates, the top 2, top 3, whatever the board may decide today, to bring before the board, and have those top candidates interview before the board. Also, other boards have asked to review all applications in comparison to all the applicants. And that is something that the board can also add as well. That way, the board, when they are interviewing the top 2 candidates, have access to all the applicants that applied for the vacancy.
Any discussion by board? Can I make a motion? I would like to make a motion to have our administrative committee act as the recruiting committee or the selection committee for this process.
Second.
I'm okay with that. I've been through this with Ricardo once already in 2015. I certainly would be honored to do it again if the board so chose. I don't know about Ms. Turner.
Well, I have hired before. Usually there are people that work beneath me. I am certainly willing to serve with you and help you make recommendations to this board for their ultimate decision.
Thank you. So with a motion and a second, any public comment? Seeing none, any further discussion by board members? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote, and do I need to restate it, the motion? Okay. We'll do a roll call vote, starting with Donna,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Bernice,
Yes.
myself is a yes, Ken,
Yes.
Samantha,
Yes.
and Cheryl.
Yes.
So the motion passes, and the vote is unanimous.
In order to expedite the hiring process and the recruitment and the advertisement of the position, the board may delegate to the selection committee the ability to make adjustments to the duty statement, or take up the duty statement at a future board meeting.
I just need one clarification from you, Mr. De La Cruz. You're saying that the duty statement includes the requirement to be a licensed RN, VN, or PT?
Correct.
So since we changed that in the law, right? I mean, we changed,
Yes.
not in the law, but in the law. We changed that in the law, so it wouldn't automatically come out?
No, it would still need a motion by the board. At the time that law took effect, the board did not have an opportunity to update that duty statement, and it was not presented before the board at that time.
So what you're saying is then any changes we want to make to the duty statement?
Can it have to be taken up by the board, or can be delegated to the selection committee?
Otherwise, the duty statement goes out with this language, which is inaccurate.
Correct.
I think at a minimum, you could excise that language tonight.
Okay.
And then if you're comfortable with the rest, and as I understand it, this was the most recent recruitment.
Yes,
statement
yes.
that was used about a year ago. If you're comfortable with the rest and how that was slated, you could move forward with it with that portion excised out.
So can I make a motion that we excise the outdated language to the duty statement?
Sure, and that's the first paragraph on the last page of the duty
Last page
statement.
that starts with pursuant
Yep.
and ends with technician?
A motion and a second. Any discussion by board members?
Well, the only obvious discussion, which is that we're not saying that it can't be a licensed person.
Exactly.
It doesn't need to be a licensed person, but I think we heard from the schools earlier that the schools would still prefer a licensed person to be an executive officer, so that's my only point of discussion.
if the board does elect to delegate the authority to make adjustments to the advertisement can include in the desirable qualifications or certain characteristics that you're looking for. If this is a preference, you can add certain preferences to that advertisement.
So with that being said, Donna, do you want to adjust your motion?
I can adjust that motion, well, the motion that I made was to remove that language, and then I can additionally, I guess where I'm thinking now is that do we want to put in there that I'm not sure that all the board members prefer it. Obviously, there was some that didn't necessarily prefer it because we went through the whole process going through the legislature of removing it. So, I mean, I guess I'm open for more discussion on that before I amend my motion.
Do we want to delegate to the selection committee to have the ability to adjust the posting? To say what desirable qualifications that we want in addition to the current ones? Not necessarily that they have to be a licensee.
That's a very substantial change to the desirable qualifications. I would prefer that that's voted on by the full board, would be my...
And I might recommend, because if you delegate powers to a two-member committee, you subject that two-member committee to Bagley-Keene. If it's an advisory committee, it's not necessarily subject to Bagley-Keene. So you might just weigh that into your calculus.
I would just ask that the selection committee remember that we prefer admirable qualifications.
Well, one thing about putting it, because there are desired qualifications and required qualifications. The one thing about putting it in desirable qualifications is we may get more applicants. Last time we did not get very many applicants. And I think that there was some talk from the public that the way it looked like we weren't going to hire a nurse or a psych tech anymore, so people didn't apply. So I think if it was in the desirable qualifications, it would make it more obvious, but it wouldn't exclude it. And I think the people that are not a nurse or a psych tech, I don't think it would diminish them from applying, if that makes sense.
So I will amend my motion to remove this language, but place in the desired qualifications a licensee.
And is that possible for the motion in the second? To add that in the amended motion, to add in there that a desirable qualification would be a licensee?
Yeah, so they're just making that amendment to the recruitment.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it would be RN, VN, or PT.
RN,
VN.
VN, or PT licensee.
Yes.
So the motion, as I understand it, is a motion to, like we said, omit the language on the last page that refers to outdated law, beginning with pursuant, as Ms. Norton said, and ending with technician, and then to add a desirable qualification to the recruitment, that it be a licensee of VN, RN, or PT. Great. And a motion and a second, as I understand from Ms. Turner.
And if I may, I agree with Donna that we've had a lot of public comment about this in 2015, and we had some today. And even not in a board meeting, but people just approaching me knowing I'm a board member, the public felt very, very strongly about it. It even a couple times almost got a little out of hand. So what I would say is I think that reflects the public comment that we've received in the past 2 years. I think that while not saying that's something we personally maybe would require, that the public has definitely made their voice known, and the licensees and the schools and the professional associations have all made that crystal clear to us.
Any further discussion by board members? Seeing none, any public comment? Seeing none, so we have a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call vote, starting with Donna.
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Bernice?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Ken?
Yes.
Samantha?
Yes.
Cheryl?
Yes.
Motion carries, it's unanimous. So, and that takes us to agenda item 10.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
I make a motion.
We have now concluded this board meeting. Thank you.